I started reading this book by Robin Myers right after I started working with Freedom, Massachusetts. The book is called Spiritual Defiance, Building a Beloved Community of Resistance. And it's a bunch of lectures, a collection of lectures that Reverend Dr. Myers gave about church renewal. Now, Myers wants to shift the discussions on church renewal away from making flashier sermons or services with more blue light and bigger rock bands to something that deepens people's connections to each other and to God. It's not to say that more blue light and flashier or bigger rock bands can't do that, but that shouldn't be the main focus. Now, for Myers, church is a vehicle for personal and cultural transformation. I'm inclined to agree. And as faith organizing director for a statewide human rights campaign, that's really what I need church to be at this moment in time. Now, I started working for Freedom Mass in April after a post-seminary wilderness period. Now, I entered my MDiv program in 2013, super excited to start my path to ordination in the United Church of Christ. Beaming my first day, I remember just walking in and being so overtaken by joy that I almost cried. But then after 2 years of interning with this church and listening into several conversations about why people of color aren't showing up, why young people aren't staying, why all of these questions and the quick fixes that they were taking, I started to wonder. I exited my program, graduated, completely unsure about my place in the church as it is. So I spent a year. I graduated in 2016, spent a year going to different churches to see what was and what wasn't working, and finding that those communities with a firm hand on their hunger for God and a loose grip on orthodoxy inspired more people like me to come into the fold. Now, by people like me, I mean transgender people. I am a transgender man. This is not a coming out story, so you don't have to worry about that. I hope to convey that I hope to convey that I see the work of the church shifting into something a little bit different, something less rooted in doing good church, like performance church that we can feel good about by doing something by the book, which y'all already don't do, and to focus more on that connection. Now, it's the responsibility of present-day Christians to figure out what the scriptures are calling them to do in their present-day context. Now, I use that word calling intentionally because it's something we have to listen for. It's not necessarily evident when we look at the words on the page. I come from a very small town, more conservative evangelical background where the words on the page were exactly what was meant. And there was no interpretation. No, it's just the letters, the truth is contained on the page, perfectly confined as handed down through the centuries. And that's how I thought of it. Fixed words on the page, abstract meanings or fixed meanings. Never mind interpretation, context, translation, and all those things that have since complicated my understanding of the word now. Especially as it translates to my life as a transgender person of color and a Christian. I know now that I don't go to church just to go to church. I go to church to help me live a better and more connected life. So that So since Divinity School and in Divinity School, I think one of the biggest questions that really I kept coming back to was what we're doing when we participate in worship and why we do it. The thought never really occurred to me when I was younger, but now, thinking about it and reflecting on it now, I can't help but think that we're doing something deeper and participating in something deeper here. So, Psalm 139, it's an introspective on the psalmist's relationship to God. And the psalmist speaks with a kind of quizzical reverence that, for me, inspires both awe and satisfaction. It's amazing that God could have intentionally formed all of my inward parts, my most inward parts, and incredibly satisfying to know that I am exactly who I am meant to be. Now, I don't know about you, but this is exactly what I needed to hear when I was first coming to terms with who I am. The more I read this passage, the more I see that there is something much deeper at work too, and it speaks to me a little bit differently than it did before, speaking to me more in terms of what that relationship with God looks like. What am I doing? What am I giving in this relationship? Is it just me? Or is it just God who has formed me and just God knowing me? Or am I also trying to know God? Now, when I first started asking this question, I wasn't even sure what that looked like. What I needed to do to reflect more on what I was giving in my relationship to God. God knows us, but God knew me, but God knows me, but do I know God? The short answer is, I hope so. But I continually keep trying to be in deep relationship with God, and I do so by trying to be in deep relationship with others. To be in deep relationship with God is to be in deep relationship with each other. People familiar with the concept of namaste, God in you recognizes the God in me recognizes the God in you. I understand that God exists in each and every one of us, but I also want to say that God is what closes the distance. God is not just what's around us, but also what's in between us. What is standing between bodies, 2 bodies, 3 bodies, 4 bodies, connecting everyone together. Now, our bodies mediate how we experience God acting in the world, and this passage from 2 Corinthians focuses heavily on that experience of the body in the world for those early Christians. Now, Paul's interpretation, Paul's writing of it is alarming. It's alarming, and I know a lot of people have complications with Paul, myself included, but I go back to this passage because I see something in it for queer people. I see something in it. That God, in the face of Jesus, the treasure of God's word encased in our flesh that is afflicted and persecuted. Now, as a transgender man, I think that when I was coming to grips with myself, I knew something. I knew this truth deep down inside, but was afraid to speak it. And as soon as that truth, I made that truth evident, it was like something coming alive. And it's that part of God coming alive in me and then exiting my body to fill the space in the world, to connect to others, giving me the actual ability to connect to others. Now, for me, making myself known It was proclaiming a truth that was both at once dangerous and glorious, to say, despite what you think of me or what you'll do to me, this is who I am, and I'm not afraid. And it's just so alive. It's just so, that is what is eternal in this text. Now, and I seek communities that are ready to take that on as well, ready to stand up and be in that place of being able to stand and say, this is who we are. This is, like, we are not afraid to proclaim the truth. We are not afraid to proclaim the gospel. We're not afraid to be who we are, no matter what you will do to us, no matter what. Because this is what's right. This is justice. Seeking those communities where my less palatable pieces, or the pieces that people say are less palatable, can come through those doors with me and sit in those pews with me. I see communities that back me when my life is called into question, and a community that challenges me to be the best version of myself, and that hears me when I need it to be and do better. Because for me, my lived life is part of how I worship. For me, being in this body, there is no line between the world here and the world out there. At least the world in here, in a supportive community where I can feel like I can be myself, I'm trying to make that manifest out there. So my understanding of this particular church, the MCC, is that it is radically supportive, and I feel like I've experienced that tonight and the previous time I've come here, and it's just such a wonderful place, and I'm just so thankful that I've been able to be a part of this tonight. Now, I'm hoping that as we move forward, the MCC and like LGBTQ people, queer people, anyone identifying anywhere in that rainbow while also holding that identity as Christian can come forward and stand together and stand with each other when our community comes under attack. And that is part of what the work I'm doing with Freedom for All Massachusetts is about. Going into faith communities and asking them to take a stand and to defend the rights of transgender people from those who would seek to repeal our right to be treated like humans. There are a number of ways to get involved, and I have ways to get involved with me in my bag, and we can definitely talk about that a little bit later. But the good news in all of this is that I see in this community that supportive place that we can call home. And it's about bringing this place out into the world to make manifest what the world needs. Amen.